seconds that everyone can drop by for the people that are not perfectly on time, and then we will kick off the webinar. All right. Maybe in the meantime, before we start with the official part, always fun to see where you guys dial in from. So when you're arriving and just tapping in the chat where you're dialing in from, always nice to see how international the group is over here, and if we have to say good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. All right, I see the Netherlands, of course, Belgium, Brussels. I'm also in Brussels today. Great, some people from the Middle East. All right, a nice group. So then I would say we're gonna start kicking it off. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian. I'm the sales manager of Elimity, and I welcome you to our webinar, Mastering Exit Reviews, Achieving Provable Control Within Days. And we have already, as I see, a nice international group. So the reason why we actually chose the topic to talk about the exit reviews is, that's becoming more and more a cornerstone of modern cybersecurity and the strategy, and especially with all the regulations coming up. NIS2 is all around Belgium since I think yesterday, the first country in Europe that officially made the transformation into national law. But of course, we have ISO 27001, the SOC 2, and so on, and all those different certifications, you name them, they're all different in structure. However, they're all running. One of the parts you always have to take care of is regular structured recertifications, so exit reviews as a cornerstone of your security. And when we look at the practice, we see there are a couple of challenges out of there. So first of all, there are so many identities. They are just like exploding. You have internal identities, external identities, different sources, all those kind of things. And that brings us directly to the second challenge. They are all in different places, right? So you have your own systems, you have on-premise, some legacy stuff, then you have new cloud stuff. All those have different identity stores, and how you're able to bring them together. And then what is happening, or what is then actually the third challenge, or the result out of that, is organizations need to get to comply. So what do they do? Either themselves or they hire a consultancy service, but it's all manually. So a kind of exporting identities of the different sources, cut and plug them together in different Excel spreadsheets. I can imagine that maybe sounds familiar if you dial in today, which is of course not a really nice process for the people that do that. It's painful or boring, repetitive exercise. And for business, it's also not pleasant to kind of fill in Excel forms. It's hard to track, and especially when we look at the audit proofness of those kind of things, that's a challenge. So why are we here today, and with who are we actually here today? I'm maybe going to go back to that slide, because then I have also the gentleman over there. Today I'm here with Ümit Yilmaz, EAM Solution Architect from our partner audit-ready. I'm going to give it in a second, explain you what audit-ready is. And I have our VP of Product, Martin de Cat. If you're a regular visitor of our webinars, you already heard of him, VP of Product and one of the co-founders of Elimity. And indeed, why do we team up with audit-ready? And what does make sense to combine those kind of solutions? We have a solution that is offering lightweight solution to automate the process, or like support the process of identity and access management. About that. Okay, and the reviews over there. So when I come back over there, that's why we teamed up with audit-ready. They are experts in identity governance and access reviews. They see those challenges every day with different clients, different sizes, all those kind of things. So there, especially the expertise of Ümit come to place, and then afterwards.
No, I think that Christian dropped, at least from my end. Ümit, do you still see him?
He's dropped on my side as well.
Oh,
he
Okay.
was in the middle of introducing triple ID, so is it an idea that they take over here?
Yeah,
Potentially.
I'll share your screen then.
All right, all right. So, triple ID. Let me start by introducing myself briefly first. I'm Umit Yilmaz, a little bit over 10 years in the industry, having done very, very heavy development tasks, operational stuff, advisory. You can find me all over the place whenever it comes to identity and security. And about 3.5 to 4 years ago, I decided to create Triple ID. And with the mindset of making sure that our customers will especially get relieved of all the troubles they have in their identity security. So, what we are trying to do is help you out from the very beginning until the very end. We are very specialized in what we call these days the heavy identity and access management. But with Elimity, we know that the market is also wanting, basically screaming to get a lightweight identity and access management solution as well. And that's why we decided to partner up with Elimity to help our customers in the begin stages with their IAM journal, or what you also encounter a lot when they get stuck in their journey with Elimity by providing them a lightweight and efficient solution that gives them especially the insight that they very usually are missing. Having said that, I'm going to continue with the next slide, Martin. Identity governance, guys. Why is identity governance so important? Well, everybody knows the usuals. We are in critical infrastructures, or we are prone to all kinds of regulatory compliance requirements with NIS2, which was officially launched in Europe today, but was postponed in the Netherlands, for example. ISO 20001, German customers in the financial markets dealing with BaFin, etc. Those are the usual things we deal with. But in the end, those regulatory compliance frameworks are there to basically increase your security. It is trying to trigger you to up your security, to think about it, to enhance it. But what is very often overlooked, I think, and is the operational efficiency. I mean, whatever we do in our IT infrastructure, and think big, if you are working for an enterprise organization, you have thousands of employees and dozens, if not hundreds, and some of our customers have even 1,000 plus applications. A huge effort is required to be efficient in your operations. Identity governance is there to reduce the overhead you're creating when you're doing stuff manually or decentralized. We can prove that identity governance can seriously earn you money as well instead of just costing you money. And why are they traditionally notorious for duration and budget? I mean, that's the classics. For that, I'm going to skip to the next slide already by providing a customer case. Let's just get you the case of an access review, for example. I mean, you have hundreds or thousands of employees. You want to periodically review their accesses because, as we just spoke, you want to comply with a framework which requires you perform access reviews. You have hundreds of applications. And just as a profile, I have stated a few customers. One of them is about 3,000 users, and another one is, and these 3,000 users are just active in the Netherlands. Another one is 5,000 users active worldwide, and they have decentralized controls. They have usually an IAM solution, and very often when we get there, the first complaint we hear from operations is there is no cooperation from management. Then you walk to their management as a consultant and tell, hey, we are hearing that there is no clear cooperation. Then management says, well, we want to, but we need to explain to upper management as well, like what are we spending our money on, or what is the actual risk here. So you see there that operations is struggling with access reviews, but also struggling to get a good use case made towards management. So management is not able to make a decision either. And the situation is as explained, lots of decentralized controls, very skilled people, but only within the application they are reviewing, using very difficult Excels. And when you compare those Excels per application, you will notice you cannot or you barely standardize them either, because all of the applications have like different data models or different requirements or different checkpoints that need to be checked. And very important as well, sometimes you have very complex structures of multiple applications which are working together, where you are not able to do cross-application access reviews, like, for example, to check separation of duties, because everything is manual and decentralized. Then things finally become visible, because the moment an external auditor gets into place, an audit finding happens. And suddenly, management is aware of what the problem is, or because they have an audit finding, the people from operations can make their point. And all of this happens while many of these customers have an IAM solution acquired in place. But due to the nature of an IAM solution being a very, very big, let's say, strong tool with a lot of options you can use, you notice that they have somehow gotten stuck somewhere in the process with their IGA or IAM solution. They started importing, for example, a major identity provider like Active Directory, LDAP, or Entra ID, for example. Then somewhere along the way, they got stuck, and due to the nature of an IAM solution who wants to manage those identity providers, due to them not being lightweight, they never got to the point where they were able to properly show management what the situation basically is. Not to mention, we are also lacking resources in general to either restructure processes or implement an IAM solutions. And that's where lightweight IAM gets into place. There where the big guns can be slow to use and hard to reload, a lightweight solution, which is only meant to read data, is possibly a lifesaver. So this slide has already been there, and let me then explain what is the essence of a lightweight solution, and why we as consultants are trying to focus on a lightweight solution as well. When we are in the field, and we have been, I personally have been for over 10 years, I have been implementing very heavy solutions which do full governance of the platforms, like connecting target systems, managing them, putting in very complex role-based access control structures, setting up SLDs, and so forth and so forth. But it took years. What customers clearly need, if they are at the beginning of their journey or whether they are stuck somewhere, is first get back to the basic. Why are we even doing all of this? We are trying to get compliant, we're trying to increase security, we're trying to reduce risk, we are trying to be operationally more efficient, hopefully reducing cost there as well. But in the first place, to realize what can be done, we need to collect some data. And once we have collected that data from our HR sources, from other sources, which maybe contain your external identities, your partners, your contractors, or whatever, we need to start collecting data from our target systems as well, from our major identity providers, from critical systems. Once you have that data, we need to correlate them, because once correlating them, things are starting to get more and more visible. You might suddenly notice, heck, I'm not able to correlate tens, hundreds, or thousands of accounts. That means you have accounts in your organization which have no owner. You have no clue who the identity owning them is. They might not have a manager. It means you are not in control. You might notice you know who owns them, but the owner is not working anymore, but the account still looks active. Or you might get very negatively surprised, by the way, by seeing just how many accounts you have, which are just service accounts or shared accounts. And finally, you are creating the visibility, which you basically need for any kind of manager to show, look, this is where we stand. So once you have collected the data, correlated the data, understood what's going on, you can finally start reviewing them. And normally with a very high-grade, enterprise-grade IGA solution, it would take months, if not years, or you might even never reach it. And with the lightweight solution, it's a matter of days, a few weeks to get all your data imported, correlated, and then you get into acting mode. Review it, continuously monitor it, and act on it. So, to summarize, manual access reviews are really, really painful. I've seen it throughout my career with every customer I've had. They have, like I said, hundreds, if not thousands of applications. Everyone is doing it decentralized. They are doing it with different Excels. They are doing it manually, and depending on their criticality rating, some need to do it daily, weekly. Some are better off with a less critical application and are only supposed to do it every 6 months. But the process is extremely time consuming, error prone, and it is best not done manually at all. Having said that, I'm going to give the word to you again, Martin, because that's all the slides I have. You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you. That could have been a painful webinar. No, okay. Thank you for the proper introduction. So yeah, that's what we're talking about here. This is the need for this provable control, and this provable control, if you look at it from a data perspective, means that you have this visibility, you have the overview of all the accounts and the permissions and what your people can do. You have that in one place, so you can spot risks, so you can let these accounts be reviewed and clean up the necessary findings. If people indicate that something has to be changed, to do that efficiently as well. And so if we go back to the last slide of Umit, the part about, or the second by last, the part about the this one here, about the provable control, the main challenges in practice for achieving this are typically two things. That's collecting the data, like Umit mentioned, and secondly, reviewing the data, so making sense of it. And that's for the security team first, but secondly, for all well, if the security team doesn't know everything anymore, all the team leaders, the application owners, to make sense of this typically very technical data and include them in a structured review process as well. And so, because this is hard to get, and because this is something that many organizations have to do, like Umit said, this is something that many organizations are doing manually. And in order to alleviate that painful form of access reviews, we started Elimity 6 years ago. And we typically work with CISOs and IAM leaders of companies of, well, several hundreds of employees, up to tens of thousands of employees in many different sectors and regions. And it's always focused on lightweight identity governance. So you don't want to waste time on setting up the provisioning, and you want to focus on a rapid collection of who can currently access what, run these access reviews, follow up on the necessary changes, prove that you're in control, like Umit summarized it. And so we turn this painful access reviews, this picture, into a pain-free access reviews, with which we mean that the data collection, that it's an open platform for any application. We have out of the box connectors, of course, for the usual suspects like an Active Directory or file shares or SharePoint or Azure AD and all of those things. But all of our customers are enterprises with stuff that we've never heard of before. So there's a strong bias, a strong focus, sorry, on custom integrations and making that as low as easy as possible as well. And then a business-friendly UI, you automatically follow up on progress, so you're not busy anymore with cutting up Excel sheets in different pieces and then following up on who has replied and who has not, and then sending manual emails. No, the platform does that automatically for you. And then if people actually send some input, then it automatically progressed or translated into tickets into an ITSM system that you want. And you even get the proof that you have done these necessary changes, which is a very powerful form of audit proof, because in total this reduces effort, but at the same time you can show that you have the visibility, that you have noticed risks, that you have run the access reviews, and that you have processed the feedback. And that's really the process that this platform focuses on. You set up connectors to the different systems. The data is gathered in an automated way. You define a new campaign. All of the access reviews are sent out. People respond in time with their feedback to create this into ITSM systems. And for the campaign owner here at the bottom, the very important thing is that you can easily track the campaign progress, collect audit proof, and really show that you're in control. And that's it from a high level point of view, but to show you what this looks like in practice and how to set this up, I'll show you a deeper dive into a case study in a bit. But one quick remark though is that we're focusing here in this webinar on the concept of access reviews. Just very quickly know that these reviews are part of a bigger governance platform that has a focus on data collection, access reviews, change requests, everything that you need in order to take back control or to keep remaining in control of who can access what. And I'll show you in a bit what that looks like. So let's look at a specific case study. The case study that we've chosen for the webinar today is one of a medium-sized company in our experience. So it's a company of around 2,000 employees that wanted to increase their internal control, to decrease cyber risk and to show compliance. But like many companies of these sizes, well, they weren't a bank, so they had to do a lot with a small security team. And if you think back to what the context then is, well, in this case, it's really they were doing some of the access reviews already. They were trying to manage with as little time they could spend on this. And some sysadmins were tasked with exporting data from Active Directory or from some specific applications once every 6 months. And then these reviews were done manually. But clearly this was only done for the core systems. And clearly it's very hard to do this systematically over time. So in this case, the standard way of working of Elimity and Triple ID is in these 5 phases that you have here. So in phase 1, you first work towards visibility as quickly as possible. Yeah. So my kids are home. Okay, that's working from home, of course. Sorry about that. So you first work towards visibility as quickly as possible, meaning that you integrate with the out-of-the-box connectors or CSV exports maybe, in order to then in second phase investigate these risks and clean these up as quickly as possible. And then you mature to more continuous data collection if there are any connectors that require a bit more time. And then ideally you start with investigating the risks, cleaning up in a first phase. So that's focused on the core security team. But as I said before, at some point you don't know everything anymore, and you have to include other people like the line managers, like the application owners in the cleanup. That's the fourth phase. And so ideally, from our experience, you first do that really with a cleanup mentality. So if you find orphaned accounts, if you find admin accounts that shouldn't be there anymore, then at least focus on the highest risks first and ask these people whether these accounts really shouldn't be there anymore or if they're still needed. And then once you're in control, then you mature to more continuous monitoring, more continuous governance, where you do this process, repeat this process for the complete set of all accounts maybe, or all groups, and not only the high risks ones, and repeat this exercise every 6 months, every 12 months, and so on. And so in the platform itself, this looks a bit, this is an example of what the platform looks like. This is a demo environment with some of the usual suspects that we see a lot, like Active Directory, Azure AD. 9 out of 10 customers ask that. And then it kind of depends on where your focus is, whether you want to focus on maybe unstructured data like file shares or SharePoint with the different sites and the files in those sites, or maybe database administrators or cloud environment like Google Cloud and so on. But the essence is that you start off in the first phase with building this data foundation, ideally also including the employee, and putting this as a central part of your data model so that you then have the employee with all of the metadata from the HR system, like the start date, the end date, the place in the organization, the name of the manager, the function description, may be all very interesting for security controls, and then link that employee record to all of the different accounts in the other system so that you see who can access what. And at this point, I can give you a presentation of 2 hours by itself on all the different controls that you can do on that. But the focus of this webinar is really on the access reviews. So very briefly, in this case, we typically apply this framework of 8 categories of security controls focused on orphaned accounts, privileged accounts, segregation of duties in a financial context or around financial systems, and then typically also business-specific controls are. Kun je even naar buiten gaan, Carleen? Business-specific controls that the organization itself typically knows a lot about geography, or maybe that engineers that should not have access to production environment and development environment together. All of those things, those are the things that you put into the system as what we call stored queries or controls, so that you end up with a view of your most important risks. You know what to focus on, and typically this is also the perfect starting spot for then running your access reviews. Because if you see that, for example, there are admin AD accounts linked to inactive employees, then typically this is a major risk. This is something that really shouldn't be there. And in this case, in this data set, there are 2,739 of those findings. Again, as a security team, you cannot know which of these are still needed and so on. So start from this list, split this up into different access reviews to the different people, and involve the team leaders or the application owners, the people that own these accounts ideally, into the question, hey, we found as the core security team that these are AD accounts that haven't been used in a while. Are those really not needed anymore? And so that's how you then get into the phase of these access reviews here. And these access reviews, those are structured in the platform in the form of a campaign. A campaign is always a bundling of multiple access reviews, so which you can then track the progress over time. And a campaign, well, you can create these access reviews one by one if you really want, if you want to make a very specific one. But ideally, you define, or you start by defining a complete campaign all at once. So there are many variations of what you can do and what people have done in the platform for their specific organizations. But a typical example is something like, let's review the Active Directory users and their groups. And let's do a subset of that. So focusing on one of those queries, and let's group them by the manager. And so in this case, if you do that in this data set, this ends up with several hundreds of these access reviews that will be sent out. You define, or you specify the assignee name once. And from that point on, you can just click create campaign from the template, and it will create all of these access reviews at once, send out the invitations, track these people over time, and so on. And just to illustrate you what the process looks like, I've prepared one specific access review. So the person then receives an email like this. By the way, completely configurable, because ideally you would not want this to say Elimity, but really the logo, the colors, and the name of the organization itself, so that these people know that this is something that comes from their own organization and not from some tool that they've never heard about. And then ideally, again, you provide some information here, completely customizable, put your own logo here. And then the question in this case was about Active Directory users and their groups. So it's 2 phases in access review for this. So first of all, I assume that the organization is called Contoso here. So the question then is, are these people still active? So these are the people that we see in the team of the recipient of the access review. The first question is, are these people by themselves still active? And if this person has left Contoso last week, can be deactivated, something like that. The user itself. And then secondly, the access review presents a view of all of the AD groups in this case, but it can be any slice or dice of the data that you have. In this case, Active Directory groups. And here we chose for a visual representation because as a team leader, this still remains quite technical information. But if you see patterns, then it quickly becomes a lot more easy to reply. So you see that most of the people in this team have this Fortinet SSL VPN user group. Maybe this is something that everyone can have. So let's just say, well, yeah, let's give this to everyone. But at the same point, at the same time, sorry, you see some outliers here where people can do some things as the only one in your team. So this Orly Quantum has this power user FR Active Directory group. In that case, let's remove these from her. She doesn't need this anymore. You can provide some comments. And if a team leader is happy with the review, you just submit this result. And what you'll see in Elimity Insights is that this review that used to be open has now been closed. You have received this feedback, and all of the things that were submitted are gathered here in what we call change requests that are automatically tracked by the system. So if someone has indicated that this account here should be deactivated and it's actually not there anymore, it has been deactivated, then this is automatically turned from open into resolved, which is quite powerful audit proof because you have requested people for input and they've provided their input, and you even have the audit proof that you've done these necessary changes. And then secondly, you can also let these changes be forwarded to a system like ServiceNow or Jira or whatever ITSM system that you want, so that the people that can actually make changes to Active Directory or your important systems can keep on working in the same systems and the same processes that they used to. And so that's an overview of the general flow of creating these access reviews and the different features that the platform provides to do that. So as I mentioned, there's a strong focus on these insights because that also gives you the ability to focus your access reviews on the critical groups, the critical risks, sorry, in the first place. There's a bit of this monitoring that I haven't shown you that focuses on these stored queries that you've seen before, where you illustrate or where you gather your most important risks, where you identify your most important risks. And if you want, you can also add subscriptions to this, so you get notified if new risks are found, even in between access reviews. So that's a feature for the core security team. And then for the rest, what we've discussed is these change requests, the information, so the understanding of the data, and then collecting the data, which I haven't shown too explicitly because, again, this is a presentation of several hours by itself if you want. But the gist is that there's this library of out-of-the-box connectors that really come with the platform, are maintained by us, and for which you can easily configure that. And it's just configuration, nothing else. But then all of our customers heavily built on custom connectors as well, where you define the data source of something like, let's say, SQL admins. You define the data source of what you want to import. We do the analysis of where this data is located, and then in a couple of hours, up to maybe a day, you have an automated data import, and that's how we get to a process as quickly as what I've shown you here before, where you really get to this visibility in a matter of days for your top 5, top 10 systems, ideally. Then you work from your low effort but high value applications to high value but maybe more effort applications. And then in sprints, in this continuous evaluation, you add more and more data to your application, and you show that you're more and more in control of more and more applications in your IT landscape. And that's really what this is about. This is about speed. Like Umit said, we don't want to start, or our customers typically don't want to start an IAM project of months or years to come, but rather you would like fast insights, fast results, and fast setup of these access reviews, so that you can show that you're in control, that you're doing the necessary processes, and that you're actually taking control of who can access what. And so that being said, one side remark here: we've now discussed this platform in the fashion that the customer, the organization, maybe you would use this platform yourself. But if you're in a hurry and if that's just one step too far right now, what Triple ID and ourselves also present or offer to the market is that we take this system and come to you in the form of an identity security assessment. So the system, the platform is still installed, but we take control of everything. We connect it to the most important systems, typically top 5 or top 10. We apply this framework of KPIs and key risk indicators to your data, so that you end up with a report, as well as a live version of Elimity Insights where you can investigate the results. And if you then want to start cleaning up these findings in the next phase, it's just something that you can keep on running in order to then set up access reviews, implement monitoring, address the findings with these change requests and so on. So that's really the most lean and mean that we can make this service to be. So that being said, we also have some homework for you to do, of course. So even if you don't do it with our platform, if you want to take control of who can access what, then these 6 steps are really our way of looking at things. Again, if you don't use it with the platform, at least try to apply this data-driven mindset, where you start from your top-level risks first, inventorize what your most important assets are and what the related identity sources are. Then define the essential security controls in the second step on these systems. Start from our KPI guide that I've shown you before, and there's a link on the next slide as well, if you want to have a structured view of all of these things. And then collect data. That's really important. Don't start asking people, team leaders and business owners maybe about the accounts in their system, but rather look at your data, your actual accounts in Active Directory, Azure AD, or any important system. Apply your security control, include the team leaders in the findings only then, to make this question of the access review very specific and to the point. And then if people indicate that something has to be changed, then act on these risks and put on some monitoring to really show that you're progressing over time and show to an auditor that you're actually in control. That's the gist of our way of looking at how to prove that you're in control with as little effort as possible. And that being said, Christian, that's everything that I had to show. So if there are any questions, we still have some time left, and we'll be happy to go deeper into those.
Let's open the floor for the Q&A. I hope now I'm not disappearing. Apparently I disappeared in my intro, but no, I'm back and I'm audible and I'm visual, so that's already good. So indeed, now the floor is yours for all our attendees from all over the world. Do you have any questions for our 2 experts over here? Product related, consulting related, all those kind of things. So if there's anything you would like to ask now, please just drop it in the chat or in the questions module. That's also possible, and then we will answer them one by one. So there is already some questions coming in. The first one I see here is a rather technical one. I guess, Martin, that might be for you. It's about the different deployment options of Elimity. Is there only a cloud supported, or how is that done?
No, cloud and on-premise, and that's a choice that we've made at the start. We actually aimed to be a SaaS first company, I would say, but you just see that kind of hinders the lightweight deployment. You then get into these data delivery agreements and data sharing agreements and so on. So in order to really speed things up, it's easier to bring the software to the data than the data to the software. So we support SaaS deployments as well for SaaS first companies. But I think right now 2/3 of our customers will have on-premise deployments. So I mean deployments on a VM that you control yourself in typically their Azure cloud or something, where it's then easier to connect to Active Directory and file shares and all of these things locally. Your data remains local, and so that's one of the things that really speed up, especially these assessments where you don't want to waste time on administration. You just want to go to quick visibility and insights and then start cleaning it up. So both on-premise and SaaS, that's the answer.
All right, then I have another question over here. It's still related. I'm gonna cluster them a bit, but this one is still related towards the solution, to the implementation, but maybe also some one for Umit. How much time does implementation of Elimity take?
And maybe I can give a comment. Let's just say, depending on your requirements, within 2 weeks, you will start seeing business value. That's the standard answer I gave here. Within days, we can set it up and start collecting the data first. And within weeks, basically, Martin, in line with your presentation with the slide you shared as well, within 2 weeks, the business value will start showing itself, meaning you have implemented it, and you can continue implement it, of course, to get even more business value out of it.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I would answer as well.
Awesome. All right, then I would say we go over the next question I have here. There's a question: when linking an identity with his or her accounts, can this be based on a sort of formula or logic?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll just show you. So I didn't go into too much detail of the platform itself, but the way that the platform looks at the world is in the form of these sources. So you define individual sources like Active Directory, Azure AD, file shares, and so on. So these are individual pieces with their own data model that can be refreshed individually, independently of the rest of the system, and so on. And then you define how the objects in these sources are linked to each other. So in this case, an easy example is link the, where's the Active Directory link? Here it is. So this is the link of the Workday employees, so the HR employee records, to Active Directory users. And in this data set, we've done that by the attribute personnel number and matching that to the employee record of the employee number of the Active Directory user. And so in that case, that's how you build up the complete data model or a picture of your complete data model. Wanted to go to a slide, but it's not in this slide deck. But then ideally, you put the HR record central. You link it to something like Active Directory users. If you're importing file shares, then in those file shares, you have these principles. For example, these principles in a technical level, they're only SIDs, but with the linking strategy, you again identify or indicate that these are linked to groups or users in Active Directory. And by linking all of the different pieces of your data foundation together, you get to this overview where you have from the HR person links to all of the different pieces of your data of landscape in a way that represents actually how those things are linked for you. It might be that in your case you won't use the employee ID, but maybe an email address or something like that. That's completely configurable. That's how we do that. Did that answer your question,
Right.
Steven?
Indeed. That was also my next part to see if that is a good answer to the question. Well, maybe then in the meantime, because we indeed get some questions via the chat and some via the questionnaire module, so maybe we handle another one in between. Martin, you mentioned the identity assessment as well. It answered the question already, so that's good. I offered those. I have a question here asking whether or not when I just do an exit review once in a year, do I just go for a yearly assessment, or what would you recommend on doing?
Depends on what you want to achieve. We see that in the majority of our cases of our customers that you want to do something with the data of the assessment. So maybe to show the slide of the assessments again, it's more than just a report. It comes with, of course, there's a report with a management summary and key risks and so on. But really, the thing that makes this operationally valuable is that you can investigate the results. So, for example, if the report says there are so many authored accounts in Active Directory that are admin level, then you can indicate or you can investigate the exact lists that represents this number in Elimity Insights. And so keeping this platform alive is very low effort after an assessment. And typically that's what you do because you want to do something with this data. But from a governance perspective, from a compliance perspective, in theory, it could be good enough in order to just repeat this exercise every year, for example. That's completely your choice.
All right, thanks for that. And then I might have an interesting one for Umit. in regards to how would the typical triple ID engagement would look like with a solution like Elimity. Can you give us some insights on that one?
Yeah, sure. So you would first get an introduction, of the product together with one of you guys. Very often we hang out together a lot with Elimity. We make sure there's both vendor engagement as well as partner engagement. So we make sure you get an introduction of who we are, who the vendor behind the product, that we support is, and we make sure to understand what your actual requirement is so we can set up how Elimity can help you out. So we make sure you can get the consultancy from us, the implementation from us, and the software as well from us, meaning any requirement you would need is analyzed and delivered by us. And to be honest, what I like to do myself is I used to be something called a full stack software developer. In the security world, especially identity security, what we often see is the analytics and the reviews, etc. The implementation ops are very much divided. We make sure that whenever we support a product or a service, we support it from beginning to end. So anything you would need with Elimity, we would support all of it. Nothing excluded, basically. That's our approach.
All right. Thank you for the insights, Umit. So I think that being said, all questions are answered. If there are any questions that popping up in your head after the session, after the things when you're driving at home this afternoon or something, and you reflect on the webinar, some question may come up, please reach out to any one of us. And our contact details you'll see on the slide. If you want to have something really product related, you can reach out to the three of us. If there's something more broader, more consultancy related, please reach out to Umit. We are open over there. Then thanks everyone for dialing in from all the different places in the world. We think we had a great session today. Thank you, Umit, for joining. Thank you, Martin, for the great presentation. So we learned a lot today. There is some homework. I think the slides, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, will be shared as well. So
the whole recording will be shared.
And the recording, obviously. So if there's something you want to share with your colleagues, you want to revisit, all those kind of things are possible. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you had a great and educational session. And of course, we're going to do those things on a regular basis, and you will be informed when the next session is coming up. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending where in the world you dialed in from today.
Thanks.
Thank you too, Christian. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.